It's awesome being here. Thank you so much for coming out to see our panel. Today we just spoke about scaling content, which is obviously a very important thing. But then once you scale, you start wanting to monetize that content. And I think that's a big struggle for creators. It's a big struggle for content creation companies as well. As a podcast network, as a media distribution, as a platform, I think we always think about the monetization of content being something that's really, really important. And for us to survive, we need to know what's the best way we can do this in this type of economy. Of course, I have to throw stats at you. So I think we all know Gen Z spends a ton of time on mobile, like an average of 5 hours in Saudi Arabia. Millennials, we're not so far behind at 4.5 hours. In terms of podcasting, I come from a podcast background, so I'm a little biased. There's about 5 to 7 million people in Saudi Arabia who listen to podcasts. And the average listener daily is about 1 hour, which is kind of crazy. And then you have gamers. People spend a lot of time on gaming, about 1.5 hours daily average in Saudi Arabia. So all of that is content. All of that is content that we can monetize, and all of it is content that we can scale. So on our panel today, we have a bunch of people who really know a lot about monetizing content. I want to start off with Lemia. Lemia, maybe you can talk a bit about Next Broadcast and what you guys do. And also the potential, you guys come from a podcast / audio background. So what is the potential you see in scaling and monetizing that content?
Yeah, maybe briefly about Next Broadcast Media. We are a audio monetization platform, and we work with podcasters and podcast networks for monetization. About your question, the trends about monetization, where is it going? So we have seen an immense growth in audio consumption globally. And if we look at the numbers in the US for the last 7 years, audio consumption has increased by 276%. A very big number. So, and especially since COVID, this number is even growing even further, or pushing the growth towards audio consumptions from a consumer perspective. So therefore, the appetite from brands to run ads around that content, to monetize via sponsorships, podcasts, or even producing their own content, producing their own shows is immense. The other trend that I'm seeing is coming from programmatic advertising. Because if we look, for example, at the ad spend for video, then we see that in the US, the ad spend for video is projected, for programmatic, is projected to be 89% this year, which is immense. So I see the trend towards programmatic advertising to monetize podcast shows and podcast networks. However, we're still at a very, very early stage. And the reason is that there are hundreds or even thousands of shows, there's hundreds of networks, and programmatic solves part of the problem that brands see. If they want to run advertising on podcasts, programmatic solves one of the issues of the fragmentation that the whole audio and podcast industry is facing at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's important to have programmatic because it's passive income for a lot of creators. So the more you scale, programmatic obviously means that you're just chilling and you're making money, and that's great. But it's a scale game, right?
Yeah, and we're seeing already brands, big brands like Samsung, GSK, Nestle. They're already running campaigns for programmatic podcast advertising. Yeah. And we only see the demand growing from these brands and other brands.
Excellent. And I think brands is a key word. So maybe taking it over to Bassem. How do you see the attraction, or you as a person who represents a content creation company such as Salt, where do you see the attraction between brands and the content that you put out there, and how can you work with these brands directly to build content like that? And do you see it as something that's more attractive for creators to work with brands? Of course, I mean, the marriage is between us and brands, right? So.
Thank you, Basil. First of all, I would like to give a big shout out to the STEP organizers. giving this
Shout out.
platform for podcasters. It really means a lot. This kind of recognition, we really needed to say that we're here, we're out there, we're doing great work. Just people need to know more about it. Regarding brands, as you said, there has been an increasing demand over the past 2 years. I mean, for the whole industry, but also we've been approached by a number of brands and corporates that are interested either to run ads or to produce content, basically to market their products. And I think the way they look at it and think about it needs to adapt a little bit to the audio, because audio is intimate. So we try to capitalize on the storytelling element, make sure that the brand has a story to tell, not basically to just put an ad out there or create some content to advertise what is the company, because people already know what is Samsung doing, what is Nestle doing, but perhaps some of the inspiring stories that their work has done, maybe we can share through audio. So I think that's one way to look at it. Also, keep in mind that as a growing market, you need to emphasize on the strength of podcasts. So as SOT, we aim to deliver certain messages to our audiences. We don't want to lose their trust by becoming an advertising agency, basically. No, we're not there to advertise for brands, but rather work with them, and we're able to work with them to produce content that, it's a win-win situation, basically. So that's how we look at it, and I think it has been working very well for us.
Excellent. Yeah, I think for us also, we look at diversifying what type of content we can create. So, we worked with Nivea, for example, and they came to sponsor one of our shows. But it's a podcast, so it's audio. But we started thinking, how can we give them more? So we started looking at social media, filming the show, and kind of working with Next Broadcast on ensuring that we get more impressions and making a wider distribution of the content. Because at the end of the day, what does the brand want? They want impressions, they want reach, they want views, downloads. So you can showcase how effective that product that you just gave them is. So that's something that we definitely look at. Twitter as a platform is very, very important for us, of course. What type of content? I mean, for you, I think you see a much more diversified content, right? You see video, you see audio, you see a bunch of things. So what kind of content do you see performing best on the platform? And how do we utilize that best in terms of monetization?
Well, definitely in a crowded marketplace, I believe strong storytelling helps you stand out. Unsurprisingly, video remains one of the top winning formats, or most wanted type of format or type of content, and we can never deny its superpower, as it enables to tell you a rich and engaging content story. However, we really could witness a huge comeback for the audio space as well. As you probably know, Twitter launched earlier last year a new format called Spaces, where live audio conversations can happen. So now on Twitter, you can not only tweet or read, but even you can talk and listen. And we could really see the largest creators and partners in the region considering this new format part of their always-on content strategy. And another format that is as well highly considered is actually the newsletter. So Twitter also acquired Review because we wanted to offer to our creators another way to share long-form content and allow them to engage with their audience in a more deep way. When it comes to monetization, definitely the Amplify Publisher program on Twitter help creators get rough share revenue and at the same time monetize their valuable content. And while advertisers and creators are monetizing this content, it's also a very turnkey to advertiser to align their brand's message in front of content that is very relevant and very valuable to their target audience. So in my opinion, the word best format or the word winning can be better associated with valuable content that can be delivered across any format as long as it's resonating best with your audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think valuable content is great. And I think we ran a study last year in Saudi Arabia, and most people who wanted to basically tune into long-form content, I think it was 40% of the respondents said that they wanted to get value out of content. They wanted to learn something from content. Basically, people want to share stuff with other people, right? They want to talk around the dinner table with their friends and their family about something that they learned and that type of thing. So I completely agree with that. I think in terms of brands, we're at the front lines, obviously, trying to sell content, trying to get brands to integrate with us on propositions and different shows and different formats. How do you see brands being attracted to type of content that you try to sell? And you're always on the front lines. We talk almost daily about what brands want and how can we create.
Yeah, I mean the fact that audio consumption has increased drastically, and then which attracted the brands to go into that space is already there. More and more brands approach us to run ads around podcasts, and also if you look at the recent news. Like, for example, this week, the announcement of Spotify that acquired Chartable, which is a tech company for insights for podcasts, or Amazon acquired, different shows and some tech companies. So there's a lot going on in the podcast industry, in the whole ecosystem that indicate that the trend is there. And this is, of course, pushing brands to go into that space and to do more around podcast and podcast advertising. And then in terms of and the most popular formats, if you look at the top shows in the GCC, let's take the top 5 or top 10. The hosts of these shows are not celebrities or influencers or famous fashion or food bloggers. No, they're people like you and me, normal people. But what is very unique about them is what they do and what they talk about is super unique, and they're very passionate about what they talk about. And this is one of the main differences of podcasters, that they are super passionate about what they do and what they say. And that's the reason why they are successful and why they're connecting on such a personal level with their audience. And I think, this is one of the reasons why brands want to or should want to connect with podcasters, because the podcasters or the hosts are very, very close to their listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something you mentioned about strategy is very important, that you always align yourself with the strategy of the brand. And that's one thing we do, is always try to get the, let's say, the branding proposition and understand what the branding proposition is before we even pitch anything to anyone. Yeah. And I think that's something that's really, really important, because it's almost like you understand your audience in terms of a product, right? Your shows, that's your audience, but also the brand that you're talking to is also your audience, and trying to understand what that audience wants and what audience they're talking to helps us connect these two worlds together. Yeah. Which takes me to you, and as a guy who's in the front lines, how do you pair up your strategy of going into brands and what brand strategy is, and how you compare these two things together? And does that make it easier for you once you know the proposition and maybe pair it up with either white labels? I think there are different areas of how you create content, right? So there may be existing shows, white labels. So how do you see that?
Correct. So as you said, there are two ways to do it. Basically, some brands are attracted to the original content that we produce, and perhaps they're interested to sponsor it or purchase ads on it. That's one way to do it. The other way is to produce a white label show for them. Basically, they have full control over it editorially. It comes under their name. It's the brand's show, not ours. And whenever I sit with any client, I tell them, let's talk first about the idea. Not how much it's going to cost or how long it's going to take to get produced. Let's talk about the idea first. And adding to what Bella from Kerning Cultures was saying in the first panel about podcasting, the idea and the content is a key element here. That's what makes us really good at what we're doing, because we give a lot of attention to the idea. So I sit with them, I tell them, let's talk about, why do you want to do a podcast? You want to do it to get more reach? You want to reach more listeners? Or, why do you want to do this podcast? Because, if you're purchasing ads, probably you're better off buy some ads on Instagram or Twitter or YouTube to raise awareness of your product rather than podcasting, which is still growing in the region.
Yeah.
So I think this kind of alignment of ideas and thinking is really important. And once the brand is convinced that they have a strong, solid idea proposition, it's a collaborative effort. It's us and them sitting together, discussing the idea. How can we make it an interesting story to the listener to consume, you know? That's a key factor here.
Yeah, definitely. I think also what I find interesting when I visit Saudi Arabia is how the term podcast has become something that entered the general language. I would go to a meeting and they would recommend a podcast for me. And which I find amazing because we think it's new, but it really isn't. It's been around for quite some time, and there's quite a few shows that have been growing. And
adding to that, I mean, it's not only good for brands, it's good for content creators as well.
Sure, yeah.
Because we have a strategic objective of raising awareness of podcasts. We want people to understand the term and what is a podcast, why do we do podcasts. Like, I have struggled since I joined South to explain to my parents what is it exactly that I'm doing. They have no idea what a podcast is.
Yeah, I joined the club.
So I think for us also it's an added benefit to work with brands, big names, to showcase the work that we're doing.
Absolutely,
so,
yeah. Well, I think speaking of Saudi Arabia, I have to look at Twitter for that. Spaces is an exciting product, I think, and of course we saw Clubhouse and how that started off and that kind of thing, but it's almost like Clubhouse kind of fizzled. And then Spaces kind of took over. And, every time I see a space thing in my app, I see, a bunch of people on it, especially if it's people I follow from Saudi Arabia. So how do you see the Spaces product for you guys? And how does it help creators in scaling the content so they can monetize that content?
Yeah, sure. So the short answer is definitely creators can monetize content on Spaces. So as I previously mentioned, Spaces is a new format that was added within Twitter formats in the past year. And now live audio conversations are happening on Twitter. So, and it's getting a lot of traction for sure, and definitely in Saudi Arabia. And even like we're seeing the biggest partners and the largest broadcasters of the region considering Spaces part of their always on organic and content strategy. Sometimes they use it on weekly basis and sometimes more often, which is on daily basis. And offering like valuable content through Space is very premium. And we could really witness huge interest from advertisers in order to sponsor this type of content, being part of an innovative solution on Twitter, and at the same time that is very appealing to their audience. So by sponsoring the promos, the videos, having their branded tweet pinned on the Space page within Twitter profile on the top of the page, and even sometimes going like one step further, integrating the Space, like having some key talking points from the brand, hosting someone from the brand itself, an expert, a key executive to talk about a certain initiative or any subject they would like to talk about. So this is definitely like happening and monetizable by our creators. But at the same time, we can really witness an interest not only from advertisers, we can witness an interest from our users and our supporters. So with ticketed spaces, it's actually an advanced feature where really creators can, instead of having like a public conversation, a public space conversation, they can do kind of a private space where users have to purchase a certain ticket in order to attend the space, whether it's like a workshop or like exclusive interviews or as simple as meet and greet. And this is really important for creators because people are always informed, entertained, and sometimes like moved by conversations happening and created by our partners. And it's a key opportunity for both advertisers and supporters to show their biggest support to creators and thank them by monetizing their content and by purchasing those tickets.
That's awesome. I think you just gave me some ideas, so that's great. We work with a lot of creators, and we always explore areas for them to scale. and to also monetize. So like I think they all come in with passions, and I think that's very important to start your creation journey with passion, and we will take it on and try to scale you, and then find products like this that we can use to monetize, which is amazing. Lemia, how do you see, or how would you look at content creators, and where would you see their scaling path? Like, how would you see them scaling further? You've worked with a lot of them, of course, and of course you guys through programmatic advertising being one of the main aspects of your business, but also working with content creators to create original programming for brands. So how would you see content creators' path in scaling and monetizing?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to have a hosting platform that allows dynamic ad insertion to monetize their content, and then work with a partner, a marketplace that is specialized in programmatic advertising, because I believe that this will be the future, maybe not in the next 2-3 years, but definitely probably in the next 5 years, because we see that trend with video, and we see the numbers that are the numbers of advertising that is bought for video via programmatic. And at some point, it will be a similar number for podcast as well. So that is my suggestion. Besides that, stick to the category. If you're passionate, talking about a specific content you're passionate about, stick to it and don't get distracted. That's the main thing that every content creator should be focused on, to produce the content that he's passionate about and connect with their audience.
Yeah. I think creators are very much like musicians, where don't think too much about the trend. Think about what you're passionate about, do it and do it well, and that will grow. You know that saying, build it and they will come. I think that really applies to content creators.
Maybe adding to that point as well, because from a brand perspective, a brand always wants to be around the content that is positive. So keeping that in mind, producing content that impacts the brand in a positive way will always help you to get the sponsorship or a brand running ads on your show.
Yeah, I think, but there's a lot of frustrations when it comes to monetizing. You and I were talking about this just outside, and it's almost like it's hard to sort of maybe get the brand to reach a place where they can understand exactly what you're selling and how that looks like, and how that could integrate within the content seamlessly. So maybe something I'd like to maybe know. What are kind of examples, and maybe also open this up to Joelle as well, but maybe you first, kind of examples that you see seamless integration between brands and perhaps where you sit as podcast or content in general?
That's a very good question. I think it starts with understanding the process. As you said, we need to reach the same level of understanding. They understand what it takes to produce a podcast. We understand exactly that the brand needs to show the positive image they would like to show. So this kind of understanding is really important to start with. With the increasing demand as well, creators should adapt to the brand's model a little bit. So instead of focusing only on extremely, like societal issues or really deep, heavy content, perhaps we need to adapt our thinking a little bit, and create a firewall between an original content and content that really represents the brand. So that's one thing. The other is, you reach that agreement with the brand, you reach that point, and then you showcase the added value, why a podcast is a good product to invest in. Yeah. Because they also look at the return on investment. They read numbers, they want numbers, they want the analytics. So we have the data, we have the analytics. Perhaps we need a little bit to work on the return on investment. So convincing them that the content is monetizable. When you invest in a show, you can sell ads on it, you can, different ways to monetize it. So I think this is important. We have had a couple of examples, like we've done a podcast with Kiri, for example, for a campaign they launched last Ramadan. it's about kindness, you know. So you think what a cheese brand can do with a podcast, but it's all about sharing kindness and family values at the holy month of Ramadan, for example. You know, I think this was a very interesting compromise, and we reached this kind of understanding between the two of us. So
Absolutely.
it was interesting.
Excellent example. Joel, do you guys have like seamless examples of integration with brands on Twitter that took place?
Yes, sure. So actually, I love the word seamless because we definitely believe in our creators. They've been creating content for the past years on daily basis, and they are really experts. They know what the audience is craving for. They know what type of content resonates with the audience, and it's a key opportunity for brand to integrate this kind of content because at the same time, like the audience of those creators are the customers of this brand, and leveraging on the creators' expertise and having this borrowed equity is really key. At the end, like if a brand wants to really turn the content creation or the integration into commercial ad, they can just run their own commercial ads. But leveraging on this creator's expertise, integrating, having like a nice content story with a seamless integration is really key. And at Twitter is definitely doable with our Amplify Again publisher program. I keep on talking about it because it's the only format that allows our advertisers to align their brand's messaging in front of premium and relevant content, and although going one step further, which is integrating this content in a seamless way. But we always believe that and we are all here to support our creators, you know, like they've been sharing valuable content on Twitter, and we have like different features to support them to generate revenue from this valuable content on top of the Amplify. One of them is super follows. So I'm not sure if you heard about it, but that's great. So super follows will allow creators to share subscriber-only type of content and, you know, connect with their audiences in a more deep and engaging way. And on top of super follows, we have something, a new format called tips or tipping. So it's such a cool format. Creators can only enable the tips icon within the Twitter profile, and as soon as a user or supporter wants to support those creators, they simply have to click on this icon, send money or even Bitcoin off platform via a third-party payment services. And this is really key. Like the key message is like content creators are sharing valuable content, having those brands sponsoring it or integrating it, or even allowing and helping creators to get the biggest support from their most loyal fans is really key, and it's definitely doable on Twitter.
That's amazing. And do you see, is there a way for you to stand out on the platform that you can recommend to, you know, to utilize all of these things that you spoke about? But is there formats that you recommend can stand out on the platform?
So,
especially Twitter has millions of people on it, right? So like, how would you do that?
Yeah, so going to my first answer, for me, like in order to stand out with a crowded marketplace, content has been produced on daily basis, and people are often, you know, like saturated with content overload. So the need to connect with your audience in a meaningful and authentic way has never been more important. I believe the key learning here is to build relevance and learn how to organically engage with your audience in order to leave your mark and stand out through the clutter. So yes, when it comes to monetization, we can always help our creators to monetize and stand out through the clutter from their valuable content that cannot be found anywhere else. And being as well part of the global content partnerships team at Twitter, our role really consists of constantly educating our creators and making sure they are providing the world-class and in real-time content, because this is a key conversation happening on the platform on daily basis, and it's very important to have like this type of content on the platform. And at the same time, we're always there to support them with an organic strategy where they can implement the Amplify, where they can implement various Twitter features, whether it's spaces, ticketed spaces, super follows, tips or tipping, because we are here to make sure that valuable content is monetized from both advertisers and their most loyal supporters.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I think we're almost out of time, actually, 20 seconds left. But I think what you said, partnerships, I think that's an amazing word. I think it's my favorite word in business, partnerships. That's where you monetize, that's where you scale, that's where you find the right people in order to help you build the brand that you're trying to build. So thank you so much, and thank you to the panel for doing this. I don't know if we have time for questions. It's literally 10 seconds left. So anybody really fast question?
No, there's time for a big round of applause, though.